Did you know the first video game was designed to prevent nuclear war? That's right, back in the 1950s, scientists used radar screens to simulate missile trajectories, laying the groundwork for modern gaming. And did you know that the US Department of Defense actually funded some of the earliest gaming experiments, hoping to sharpen soldier skills? Today, gaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry that shapes how we interact, learn, and even make money. But how did we get from secret government labs to epic esports tournaments? This is the untold story of video games. Video games didn't start in the flashy arcades of the 80s or with home consoles. Nope, they go way back to an era when computers filled entire rooms. Did you know that Tennis for Two, one of the very first games, was invented by a nuclear scientist? William Higginbotham, who worked on the atomic bomb, created it in 1958 at a nuclear lab just for fun. This game used a tiny screen called an oscilloscope, where players hit a bright dot back and forth as if it were a tennis ball. Imagine, instead of bombs and rockets, the lab was packed with excited people lining up to play this tennis game. People hadn't seen anything like it, and the popularity of this simple game made scientists realize computers could entertain just as much as they could calculate. Then, in 1962, a group of MIT students created Space War on a computer that was as big as a room. This was a game of galactic dogfights with two spaceships, and it had mind-blowing twists like hyperspace that let you warp to another part of the screen to dodge an enemy. Space War was actually so cutting-edge that new computers used it to test graphics power and speed. It was a bit like the first gaming benchmark test. But it wasn't until Pong came along in 1972 that gaming really exploded. The first public Pong machine was placed in a bar and was so popular it actually broke from the sheer number of coins stuffed into it. The bar owner called Atari to fix it, thinking it was broken, only to discover that it was jammed with quarters. Pong was a simple game, a digital version of ping pong with a tiny white dot bouncing between two paddles, but people went wild over it. Pong didn't just spark the arcade craze, it opened the door to home gaming with the Atari 2600, which put arcade classics right into people's living rooms. And just like that, gaming was everywhere, changing from a quirky experiment into an industry. Following the success of Pong, the gaming world exploded into what we now call the golden age of arcade games, where arcades became the pulse of 1980s culture. By 1980, arcades were everywhere, and the industry hit an astonishing $2.8 billion in revenue. From Space Invaders to Pac-Man, these games weren't just entertainment, they were social events. Imagine walking into a neon-lit room buzzing with kids, teenagers, and adults alike, all lined up to play games like Space Invaders and Pac-Man. These weren't just games, they were intense, competitive battles where everyone aimed to get their initials on the high score screen. In fact, Space Invaders, launched in 1978, was so popular that it supposedly led to a shortage of 100 yen coins in Japan because of how quickly players poured money into it. And then came Pac-Man in 1980. Believe it or not, Pac-Man was more than a game about munching dots. It became an icon, with Pac-Man fever sweeping the globe. The game's designer, Toru Iwatani, said he got the idea while thinking about food. He wanted a game that appealed to everyone, not just hardcore gamers, and he nailed it. Soon enough, Pac-Man merchandise, cartoons, and even a song made it into pop culture. For many people, it was the first video game character they truly fell in love with. Meanwhile, Donkey Kong in 1981 introduced gamers to a plumber named Mario, who would go on to become one of gaming's biggest icons. Each game brought something new and unforgettable. Space Invaders made shooting games popular, Pac-Man showed the potential for character-driven games, and Donkey Kong provided games that could tell stories. Arcades became social hotspots where gamers met up, traded tips, and challenged each other, setting the stage for what we now recognize as competitive gaming. High scores weren't just numbers, they were bragging rights and even symbols of local fame. If you held a high score on a machine, you were a local hero. This era didn't just shape games, it shaped a generation. After the arcade craze, the world was ready for something even bigger. The first true console war between Nintendo and Sega. Nintendo had already pulled off a near miracle in the mid-1980s by reviving the gaming industry after the disastrous 1983 crash with the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, in 1985. It wasn't just another gaming console. The NES introduced people to unforgettable worlds with games like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid. These titles set new standards in storytelling, gameplay, and graphics. For many, this was the first experience of saving kingdoms and exploring dungeons from the comfort of their living room. By the late 1980s, Nintendo was at the top of the gaming world, seemingly unchallenged. But then Sega entered the ring with the Sega Genesis in 1989, packing faster hardware and a rebellious edge. Its cool mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog, sped through levels at breakneck speed, a stark contrast to Mario's careful, methodical pace. Sega's edgy marketing campaign took direct aim at Nintendo, famously declaring, "Genesis does what Nintendo doesn't." And it worked. Sega became the first company to truly challenge Nintendo's reign. And by the early 90s, households were divided, sparking intense rivalries amongst fans. The stakes were high, and both companies pushed their limits, releasing hit after hit to outdo each other. This rivalry didn't just bring great games, it fueled innovation that would lay the groundwork for the future of gaming. Then came the next leap, the switch to 3D gaming. Sony's PlayStation launched in 1994, and it set a new standard with its polygonal graphics, while Nintendo countered with the Nintendo 64 in 1996, showcasing 3D worlds like Super Mario 64. Players could now roam fully immersive landscapes, adding depth that was previously unimaginable. The PlayStation's Final Fantasy VII turned RPGs into cinematic experiences, and games like Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil proved that video games could handle more mature, complex themes. Sony's focus on mature, story-driven games attracted a new demographic, positioning PlayStation as a brand for all ages, while Nintendo maintained its family-friendly charm. PC gaming exploded in the 1990s, bringing players into entirely new worlds. Titles like Doom 1993 changed everything, blending gritty graphics with multiplayer intensity that gamers had never seen before. Imagine the excitement of LAN parties, where players would drag their computers to a friend's house and connect on the same network to battle in games like Quake and StarCraft. By the time broadband internet became common, online gaming was ready to scale up. The thrill of competing online really took off in the early 2000s. Games like EverQuest introduced shared worlds where players could adventure together in real time, giving rise to MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. This was when online platforms like Xbox Live and PlayStation Network emerged, allowing console gamers to join in on the action too. Then, Halo Combat Evolved erupted in 2001, taking things even further, showing that consoles could match PC shooters in both graphics and online play. It was a game changer for Xbox and cemented online multiplayer as essential for gaming. Meanwhile, Sony's PlayStation 2 launched in 2000, becoming a titan of the gaming world. It introduced gamers to cinematic titles like Grand Theft Auto 3 and God of War, each adding layers of storytelling and mature themes that captured imaginations. By the end of its run, the PS2 became the best-selling console of all time. Then came the rise of mobile gaming. With the smartphone boom in the late 2000s, games like Angry Birds and Candy Crush went viral, giving nearly everyone a handheld gaming device. Suddenly, gaming wasn't just for dedicated consoles or PCs, it was in the pocket of millions worldwide. The rise of esports is nothing short of astonishing. Just think about it. Years ago, video games were just a casual hobby. Now, games like League of Legends, Fortnite, and Counter-Strike have enormous tournaments with prize pools that rival traditional sporting events. In fact, when Bugha won the Fortnite World Cup in 2019, he took home a staggering $3 million, more than the prize for winning Wimbledon in some years. These events draw millions of viewers worldwide, and platforms like Twitch and YouTube Gaming have made gaming a daily entertainment source, with streamers sharing their skills, humor, and insights with fans. With the rise of virtual reality and augmented reality, gaming is stepping into a new realm. VR platforms like the Oculus Rift and PlayStation VR are creating experiences that make you feel like you are actually in the game, exploring worlds firsthand. Meanwhile, augmented reality, or AR, seen in hits like Pokemon Go, is blending the real and digital worlds, letting you capture Pokemon in your own backyard. Imagine how this tech could evolve in the future, where you might play a game that spills right out into your living room. And still there is more. Cloud gaming. Think Google Stadia and Xbox Cloud Gaming is opening up high-end gaming on any device without the need for powerful, expensive hardware. It is a game changer because soon you could play the latest titles on a regular tablet or phone with no lag. This could make gaming accessible in places where consoles and gaming PCs are less common, changing the industry forever. What if one day esports tournaments become as massive as the Olympics, with countries competing on a global stage for gaming gold medals? We're already seeing massive arenas packed with fans, prize pools that top millions, and international teams fighting for glory. So maybe we're closer than we think. If you're as fascinated by these kinds of historical twists and future possibilities, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Mr. History. Until next time.